一种新技术能带你进入事件的中心。
They come out of it very deeply moved.
虚拟现实技术能够在人道主义危机中唤起人们的同理心。在肯尼亚，难民们在城市里艰难生活。
Nobody respects you as a refugee guy. If you go to town, you're afraid of the police. You're afraid of even the people. They look at you differently.
城市里的难民们在苦苦寻求接纳和尊严。观众朋友，大家好，我是东方财经浦东频道主持人周俊夫，欢迎您收看今天的《21世纪》节目。21世纪作为一档新闻杂志栏目，与您分享世界故事。21世纪寻访世界的每一个角落，为您带来关于全球发展、资源开发、环境保护和人民生活的精彩故事。21世纪作为一档联合国与东方财经浦东频道联合制作的节目，与您相约在东方财经浦东频道。同时，您也可以登录联合国官方网站收看我们的节目。站在难民的视角体验生活，亦或身临其境直面埃博拉，可能吗？一种新技术告诉你有可能，那就是虚拟现实。我们一起来看下面的故事。对电视观众而言，人道主义危机再熟悉不过了。造成难民大迁徙的内战、全球性的疾病大流行，还有各种自然灾害，比如地震和海啸。我们大多数人习惯用这种方式收看揪心的事件报道，我们坐在屏幕前被动地收看。然而，假如你能走进屏幕，切身感受到当事人的所见所闻呢
？People come out of it feeling enlightened and often moved and often ready to take action. A lot of people automatically say, well, what can I do? How can I get involved?
加博阿罗拉是联合国下辖团队的创意总监，他利用尖端科技争取人们的关注和共情，并且筹款，以响应人道主义危机事件和支持全球一系列新的可持续发展目标。
Virtual reality is the ability to really take part in a story that usually you're only a passive spectator on. And it's giving you the possibility to walk in another person's shoes, understand where they live, see what their world is like. And you actually get this sensation of feeling like you're being there.
用2D 的媒介展现虚拟现实，就像现在屏幕里展示的那样，是不可能真实呈现通过虚拟现实 VR 眼镜所看到的景象的。通过多机位的拍摄，能够记录各个方向的画面，之后利用软件将各画面缝起来，由此 VR 技术就能让人们体验到无死角的影像，无论从上方、下方还是后方。
It's exciting for the UN, to be involved in some of those early experiments of how we're trying to tell stories, make these films, and work with some of the most cutting-edge people in the industry on it.
So the UN reached out to us and connected, and we realized that there was a great opportunity here to tell some very important stories and to tell them in a way that we thought would be totally new and highly impactful.
亚伦·科布林是硅谷的一名技术专家，同时也是美国 VR 设备制造和分销公司维视工作室的创始人。
It usually consists in the portable form of a mobile phone that connects directly into a viewer. So whether that's a higher end version like the Gear VR by Samsung or a Google Cardboard unit, you have basically the same idea, lenses which are using sensors to orient you and convince yourself that you're somewhere where you're not. This is the most basic VR viewer. It's a Google Cardboard. So it comes like this, and then you quickly assemble it like so. Drop your phone in here, like that. So you can look around and actually be immersed. The way that I define virtual reality at this point in time is basically the hacking of your senses to convince you that you're somewhere other than where you are. often I think of it as a sense of vulnerability. So one of the things we've realized in some of our stories is you have a heightened sense of empathy and a heightened sense of connection as a result of that vulnerability.
更强烈的连同感，更强烈的同理心，正是加博阿罗拉在瑞士达沃斯世界经济论坛上力图创造的。不仅是为了呼吁领导人采取行动，更是为了影响捐赠者加大捐赠力度，支持应对灾难的努力。
I'd started experimenting with using innovative ways of advocacy. And I started talking to a lot of different partners and people. What could we do that would be incredible? And someone said, I just came from a meeting at Samsung and, with some of these other virtual reality headsets, wouldn't it be amazing if you got all of those elite people who could actually go to a refugee camp or they could go to an Ebola clinic? I just really felt it would get our issues highlighted.
One of the things we were most excited about was the potential to get these headsets onto heads that really make the decisions and have impact in the world. We were able to put it on the heads of these change makers, and for a brief moment, put them, on the ground in the refugee camp. And it's, I think, a really powerful thing. You could see the way that it was impacting them.
除了在达沃斯放映相关影片，全世界各个高级别政治论坛上也安装了 VR 设备。其中一位使用 VR 终端的领导人，就是美国驻联合国大使萨曼莎·鲍尔。
So what the portal does is it doesn't just give you those faces, it just makes you feel you're right there.
他所收看的 VR 影片是《希德拉的云》。
Clouds Over Sidra is a short film in virtual reality about a girl named Sidra who lives in Zaatari camp, which is a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. And it is a story about a young girl who has been there for a year and a half and is giving you a tour of the camp, of what it's like, what her life is like. When the film debuted in Davos, it was a sensation to everyone we showed it to. They come out of it very deeply moved. I'd say half the people who watch Clouds Over Sidra cry.
We're seeing generally a much higher level of engagement. I mean, one, because they're actively engaged in looking around, but also, I think, a higher level of emotional connection and empathy.
The film was then integrated with the Secretary General in the Kuwait pledging conference for Syria. He made everyone at the reception at the pledging conference watch it, and it really made a big difference on getting people to pledge more and to care more and to be more involved. And then we cut a version for UNICEF where it's face-to-face fundraisers. The way they do that is usually someone with a clipboard on the street in Europe or in different countries. So they thought, well, what if we got people to experience virtual reality on the street?
看了这个影片过后，我又觉得世界上原来还有很多小朋友是连干净的水都没有的。
I was a little depressed about the situation for the people there.
Quite sad. They don't have a good environment to stay. We try our best to help them.
从联合国儿童基金会的初期报告来看，如果使用虚拟现实，劝募的有效性会翻倍。
The fact that virtual reality is so real means that we have to think a lot more about the ethical aspects of what we do.
汤姆·肯特是美联社的编辑，也在纽约哥伦比亚大学担任教授。
There's a psychological impact that VR has that's greater than the impact of photos or video. It hits you at a more elemental level. When somebody's watching a video or someone's looking at a photo, they know that they are external to the scene and they're looking in at something. VR operates at a different level. It's putting you in the scene and working on your brain in ways that I don't think is really completely understood.
We got the blessing to do one on Ebola. Waves of Grace is an Ebola survivor who is basically, you get access to her prayer and you feel like you have this intimate moment with her as she's praying to God.
慈悲的浪在联合国秘书长主持的埃博拉恢复国际会议上展映，获得了52亿美元的认捐额。
What people really feel moved by is they've never been in a poor slum in a hut. They've never been at an Ebola burying site. So many people said that they've seen that picture in the news, but actually being there while a body is being buried is something else. That makes you think about this crisis and other crises in a different way.
The most important thing is transparency. If the VR producer is trying to advance a political cause or a social cause, that needs to be made clear.
I think one just has to be really open and clear about one's methods. We're going to constantly be evolving and thinking about these ethics even more as we go forward. We privilege the human story. You know, it isn't so much the UN did this and this is what's happening and this is what you should do. It really is a quiet sort of, let's put yourself in the shoes of another. But it definitely is something that we are just at the beginning of. Being at the forefront of it, especially for the United Nations, gives us a lot of advantages to tell our stories and make a difference with a whole new generation of viewers, and especially a lot of young people. Because if we didn't do what we do with virtual reality, it would fill up with games and escapism. When a 15-year-old would unwrap his Christmas present a year from now or 2 years from now, he wouldn't have Clouds Over Sidra and this UN series there for him.
一说到难民，人们通常会想到难民营，但事实上，世界上1000万难民有超过半数的生活在城市。下面我们将带您前往肯尼亚去一探究竟。
We don't have life here. Our life is very hard. Being a refugee is not a life, and we don't have a country. I wish I have a country, and all the refugees they have a country. If there's a peace in every country, there's no refugee. But you see, expect tomorrow it will happen in your country. What will you do if you become a refugee? What will you do? You will face the same life we are facing now, not less than that.
The mandate of UNHCR, as you know, is to protect refugees and to find solutions. So as a way to protect urban refugees and refugees in general, we make sure that they are first of all identified as such and they are properly documented. As asylum seekers or refugees with the documentation, they are protected against refoulement, which means that the Kenyan authorities will not send them back to their country of origin or to another country where they could also be persecuted. And people who've been granted refugee status get an identification refugee card issued by the National Registration Bureau. The overwhelming majority of urban refugees are self-sufficient. They are not being assisted by UNHCR or its partners. We only assist the most vulnerable people. So most of the urban refugees work, take care of themselves, and are not dependent on any aid.
Ma! Nobody respects you as a refugee guy. If you go to town, you're afraid of the police, you're afraid of even the people. They look at you differently. It feels terrible. We are just human beings, like you guy. We deserve the life you live, not less than that. The way that people treat us, not being different guy, they saw us as a different person. They saw us like we don't belong to this world. But God created us. What do? I wish people treat us like a human being, respect us as a human being, live like as a human being. That's what I wish. This is our kitchen. Come on in. This is our bedroom. This is our bedroom. This is where I sleep. This is where I sleep. Come on in. This is our sitting room. This is a refugee house. This is where the refugee lives.
Bathroom mother.
This is a bathroom.
Yeah? Hi. Dale makena. Hey. Los cagas.
I show you some papers prove that something terrible happened to my wife, which is I don't want to mention in front of the camera. So if it's good for me to show you the papers so you can read for yourself. These are the papers.
I came in Isli, Nairobi, 18 years back. These patients were different than the ones I was having during my lifetime experience. Most of them are refugees from Somalia or Ethiopia. We saw that most of them are complaining of pain, different parts in the body. We give them treatment. After a few days, again they are reappearing, no change in their symptoms. It's at that time we consulted a professor who was our friend, and he told us that probably we are in front of psychosomatic symptoms. PTSD case was around 30% to 40%. We have seen people who are not going out from the home they live in for years, and they are afraid even to venture out of the door. A lot of cases we have seen. Hi. How are you? You cannot treat psychosomatic illness only with tablets or injections. You have to go to the community, you have to understand what's the problem of the community. You have to try to change something in the community. That's the only way to treat this kind of problems. Because as I told you, these are physical manifestations of psychological problems.
Yes?
Hi, Farhan. ساتة. هيا. عفوا. كو. ورن. كو واحد سياب الحين. حلوات سياحتين.
حالة نبضهم سهلة.
الحمد لله.
ما شاء الله. واحدة بي واحد.
الحمد
لله. نصلي بمعركة.
خير وياه. ايوه. ماذا حنوكي وحنا كنا بعدين قبل سنة.
ما شاء الله هذول رمتها.
خير.
خير. واتنا شغل جن.
هيا. افتو. ساتة. خير. هيا. ايه وهذا ماذا حنوك ساكتة يهود الآنتي هذا. وسيحان يسامر كان سوا. الحمد لله. الحمد لله. خير وياه ديوان سوفير شيء. waxaan isri laba beri maad arkin maanta soo mar khayr aad baan u faraxsanahay
ما شاء الله تسوق ما سنتي ما شاء الله ما شاء الله
aad
ما شاء الله
aad baan u faraxsanahay
terrorism and insecurity in Kenya has been having a direct impact on the Somali refugees. There were many terrorist attacks and terrorist threats in Nairobi, but also on the coast and throughout Kenya. Again, Somali refugees were being pointed at as responsible for insecurity.
Kaos ndio platform ya kuperform. Lakini hapo fashion show itahappen. There is a lot of risk in Isili for the youth, vis-a-vis radicalization and recruitment actually. There is a lot of risk in Isili, and it's something that we know that is ongoing. Youth are radicalized through preaching. They are given narratives that connect to the suffering they undergo as youth, employment, poverty, and all this. And many are believing the story. My job actually is information gathering. I'm the conduit between the government and the people. Umepotelea wapi mzee wangu? Yeah, every morning I do my rounds to see if there are any problems. People being harassed because they are refugees. An indigenous Kenyan maybe has insulted or abused a refugee because they are not, because they are strangers and they don't belong to this country. So we get a lot of those cases around here. I can imagine the refugee community complaining about lacking identity. They don't feel like they belong because they have not been made to feel they belong. And much of the work we do in this community is that trying to tell the host community, the Kenyan people, that refugees are also people, and we need to accommodate them in the situation they are in right now. Dr. Arsame, assalamu alaikum. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good, man.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. How are you, my sister? Are you good? Yes. Everything is fine? MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Yes. We can talk, yeah?
Most of the time, these youth are becoming gangsters and hopeless because lack of identity. They create identity by joining gangs. That's why we decided to create an identity for them, to teach them Somali cultural dance, to teach them about the language even, to teach them about the past of Somalia, to teach them, at least to create for them something to be proud of.
Why the urban refugees are here? They've not made a choice to come. They were forced at some point to leave their houses, their loved ones, everything that they had for their safety. And they've ended up in Nairobi. They could have ended up anywhere else. So it's not a choice to become a refugee. And these people are extremely courageous and resilient. They fend for themselves, they work, most of them in the informal sector, but they do work. Like anywhere else, the majority of the refugees are peaceful people. They're civilian, they're women, children, men who work very hard to make a living and to find a solution. And it's important to pass that message to the authorities.
本期21世纪节目到此结束，分享世界故事，我是东方财经浦东频道主持人周俊夫，我们下期节目再见。